Hello. Welcome to Let's Talk About It Tuesday. We're doing some shoulder dancing as a warm up today. TJ's very good at shoulder dancing. So, have you ever saw someone do something and immediately formed a negative impression of that person?
Yes. Yeah, I'd say probably more than I should, right?
Yeah, I had this one situation specifically. I remember I was watching somebody, I was sitting in front of a building waiting. It was starting time, so it was like 8 in the morning. There were a lot of people going in the office building, and there was just a stream of people walking in. And all of a sudden, this one student crosses right across the beautiful grass area. And I just immediately got so irritated. I thought, how arrogant. Like, why are you so important, right? Do you have a story like that too, or?
Yeah. I mean, like, so say we just got done with the gym, right? When people leave their weights, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to say, like you said, inconsiderate, being narcissistic, at least at that moment, and
Right.
and you tend to, especially with all the blood flow and the testosterone, dare I say, you obviously feel more of an emotional impact of it. So to answer your question, yes.
Yes, you have.
Yes, I have.
So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about cognitive biases, which are errors in the way we think and we judge people. And there's actually quite a lot of them.
Does not surprise me at all. I think that we all see it every single day, and it's going to be interesting to bring awareness to this for all of you people out there. This will be fun.
So in the stories we shared, we attributed the way they behave to their personality.
Yeah.
Like a personality flaw. I said my person was arrogant. There are actually two types of attributions that we make.
Mhm.
We make personal, like I just did, which refers to people doing things because of their traits, their moods, their efforts, or personality. But they're also situational explanations or attributions for why we do what we do. And so in judging people based on their personal attributions, what we did was we made what's called the fundamental attribution error, which is we tend to overemphasize personality traits and underestimate the situational factors.
Yeah, how true is that? Like with weather, like when people drive on weather, we're just like, oh my gosh, they're so stupid, or they have no idea how to drive in this or that, and you tend to once again get that emotional withdrawal, and then you say to yourself,
Right.
maybe they have. Yes, you make it personal. Yes, but the thing is, we can rationalize it by saying most people don't have a lot of experience driving in the rain here. Sorry for all you people that are not from Arizona, but it doesn't happen often. So it makes sense that we shouldn't necessarily judge the whole of somebody based on, dare I say, a situation, which is just something that we don't have a lot of experience with.
In the rain too, right? But when we make a mistake driving in the rain, when we make a mistake driving in the rain, we tend to think that is situational.
Yeah.
And when somebody else could possibly make that same mistake, we think it's personal. So that's called the actor-observer bias, where we give ourselves like the benefit of the doubt. But
when we cut someone off, when someone else cuts us off, man, you're ready to throw fisticuffs. But when we do, it's like, I didn't notice. At least that's me.
Right. So another type of bias that we have is called the halo effect. So the halo effect is that the understanding that we have that if a person has a positive trait, then they automatically have other positive characteristics.
Halo, you got my angel now. You got to stop connecting this to music. This isn't going to go well for us.
That's right. The converse is also true, though. If somebody has a negative trait, we automatically believe they have other negative traits as well.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I used to work with this lady who super smiley, chatted everybody up every morning. This was so very friendly. People assumed that she was also a good worker. And it used to drive me crazy. She did nothing.
How easy is it to get rid of a employee that people really like compared to who they don't necessarily like, but has almost nothing to do necessarily with their job performance, right? That's a big thing. If I'm going into work and I'm like, oh, I got this person. But if you go to work and like, oh, I got this person, it doesn't even necessarily matter how good they are at their job. But like to your point, everything else is highlighted. Everything else is improved. And especially if that first time you meet someone, it's a negative. We want to talk about brain negativity bias, right? Our brain naturally holds on to the negative energy more than the positive because from an instinctual standpoint, that's much easier and kind of the way that our subconscious mind works. So you grab onto it and you never let it go.
We see those in sports too, right? People who play a good game, we automatically assume they can play a good game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, especially like at the high school level, you see kids get playing time because it's just, they walk, right? They look the part. Yeah, perfect. Another bias that we have is called the assumed similarity bias, where we tend to think that somebody's similar to us if they have, if we have one thing in common. So, for example, if I'm in a waiting room in a doctor's office with other mothers, I'm going to assume they're going through the same things I'm going through, right? Which isn't necessarily the case at all. The other thing I do sometimes, and we do this culturally too, if I find out somebody's Polish, I will make an assumption that they were raised kind of similar to how I was raised, that they call their grandma Baci, that they know how to polka, they love pierogies, and that's not always the case, but we make that assumption,
Yeah, you assume more about a certain situation, right? You feel almost, when you get that first good trait about someone, your mind loves it so much that's like, oh, it's like kind of jumping to conclusions like, oh my gosh, there's got to be more, especially if it's something so big, like say for instance, if someone loves Power Rangers as much as me, it doesn't matter how bad of a person they are. It's hard for me to meet people that like Power Rangers as much as me, right? So I would probably overlook, or I would not necessarily look.
Make assumptions that they're similar to you in so many other ways.
Yeah. Oh, they're just trust me, they like Power Rangers like me. Trust me, it's got to be a certain thing. Ooh, something happened with the light. Then now I feel like it. Has it been brightened or am I crazy? I love it though. You look. Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay. Shoot, what were we talking about?
Another one we have is the self-serving bias. This is one of my favorites. This is our tendency to, if something goes well, we say it's personal. It's because I did a good job. But if something does not go well, it's an external factor. I get this. I always kind of joke with my students all the time about this. I'm like, well, you got an E on your paper, and so you're feeling good about yourself, and you think it's because you studied and you're smart, which is probably the case. But if you get a poor grade, well, it's my fault. I didn't design the test well. I'm a tough teacher. I grade tough, and we see that in sports too, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, in sports, abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah, so like, to pick on Dad who's sitting over there on the couch, when the Raiders do well, it's because they played well, right? But if they do poorly, it's the ref's fault, right?
Or so say like it's even bigger things, right? Like if you're a teacher of some sort, so like you're a professor, and then I have to lead psychology groups. So when someone doesn't lead it well, it's easy to revert back to attitude reflects leadership, Captain, right? Yeah. Remember the Titans, respect. But when it's reflecting on me, I say, oh, that person is just had a lot of traumas. That person is just really difficult. I am happy to have a difficult group right now. Whereas I don't necessarily give that right away to somebody else, where I revert back to, attitude reflects leadership. But when it's kind of directed towards me, I'm like, there's some gray areas.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Give ourselves a little bit of benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Next bias, confirmation bias. That is the fact that we might believe in something because it already aligns with our way of thinking. Yeah. And this is one of my favorites to talk about. I talk about this in every class, first class. It comes up when we talk about critical thinking, because we hear a fact and it kind of already aligns with what we believe in, so we automatically believe it's true. Well, I would argue that you have to research even more when it already aligns with what you believe in, right?
Can you call me, please?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt, but this is to remind me that I have something to say, because it goes back. I heard a quote once again. People don't want to hear other people's opinions. They just want to hear their opinions said by somebody else's mouth. Right? No, but seriously, kind of like this. Like as soon as you are set in your ways, how much harder is it to develop the neurological plasticity to look towards another avenue, right? Because some things are so ingrained, some things have been so reinforced. So yeah, once one thing has been confirmed, especially so young, and it's our first deep connection with whatever this passion, whatever this area is, it even makes it harder to differentiate. Right? Oh my goodness.
You might see around the news that a celebrity was cheating on his wife, and because you already know or think he's a flirt, you're going to assume that information is probably accurate, when that is what you really should be doing more research on. Not that that's an important topic to research, but
then there's some people that it's like, oh, this person's accused this person of cheating, and you're just like, that person's not getting any on the other side. You know what I mean? But once again, a bias not necessarily on what they actually did, more on what we're seeing, and so on and so forth.
So important to be a critical thinker and even researching your own beliefs. and the different sides of what the issue is that you believe in. All right, next bias is the Optimum Pessimism bias, which is our tendency to overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes if we're already in a good mood. If we're in a bad mood, we tend to overestimate the likelihood of negative outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have a hard time with people who do this because I feel like they're really being held prisoner by their moods.
Yeah, by their emotions, which we've learned is not even an accurate representation of your conscious thoughts, because emotions have been something that have been kind of acted upon when we were kids for so long before we even had that cognitive development. So, yeah, acting on emotions as opposed to necessarily thinking it through, because there's two sides to every coin. No matter what happens, there's always an optimist and a pessimist side. It depends on which one you're leaning more towards. The weather, that can affect your baseline, right? People that you saw that day, just your basic interactions with them could affect it. So it's the small things that can put you in that scope, so to speak. Like you're putting on a certain sunglasses, I'm going to see optimistic or I'm going to see pessimist. And like you said, it's easier to roll because the brain likes consistency. Yeah, and also we like negative. And it's harder from a conscious standpoint to be that optimistic side. And that's why you have to cognitively, when you are a pessimist, you have to say everything's going to be okay, and you have to force yourself into a good mood, because we're not naturally going to go back, and that's what people think. They think, I'm just going to be optimistic the next time. No. You do not. You're not naturally happiness. You build happiness. It's a fact.
I feel like this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're in a bad mood, so you automatically expect the worst, then the worst happens, and so what happens? You're just enabling that bias to continue, and you keep falling into that same trap.
Yep.
It's good to be aware of it.
Just aware, exactly. Just making sure you're not doing it a lot, because we're all going to naturally do, because instinctually we all have that pull towards the negative, but that's why we stop. You do a good diaphragmatic breathing a couple times and do the things that are going to relax the central nervous system, bring our baseline back down to normal, so that we can perform consciously how we want to, as opposed to animalistic based on our emotions.
Next cognitive bias is called an in-group bias, and that's when you favor someone from within your own group, whether it's your social circle, your family, your work group. This might happen a lot in the workplace. If an opportunity comes up, you're going to give it to somebody you already work with, you're familiar with, and where somebody else might be a better choice. So just always, keep your mind open.
When you're in high school, man, someone cheats on a friend that's a girl, right? You're throwing hands, right? That's that's where you jump to. But when your buddy is the one doing it, it's like you start to, man, I'm sure he didn't mean to, or he made a mistake. And once again, we're not condoning it, but we do once again have that bias towards depending on what it was. And you start to, when you see both sides of the coin, you're like, wow, this is completely different when it's someone that is in my group and someone that's outside your group.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
The backfire effect occurs when our belief is challenged, and instead of us reconsidering our beliefs, we hold on to them even tighter, right? We don't like to be wrong. Yeah.
You have to rationally look at an argument that you're having and say, is this person just being completely irrational towards everything that's being said? And are they being led strictly by emotion? Yes. Then they're probably facing this. And guess what? You should probably stop talking, because arguing with a fool proves that there are two in the room. Dude, that shook them up.
Yeah, we don't like to be wrong. And when we see people getting defensive, you're right. That's what's usually happening. Right.
And their body, it's funny, you'll see their body even kind of does that. Like they're trying to hold on by every last nerve and cell in their body. It's gnarly. How much more do we have?
Oh, let's see. We have a few more.
Oh, sick. Cool. I like the time. So I wanted to end in a couple minutes.
So we have a couple of others. Can we pause that for a second, because I can't see it?
This is so awkward.
I know. I'm sorry.
No, this is the belief that we hold on to information that is meaningful to us and disregard other information when we do. So keep reading. So I got you. Keep reading.
So when we get information that's vague, we try to make connections to our own personal understanding. This we see whenever we take kind of like a personality test. And like you see them on Facebook all the time. It's what Disney princess are you, or what Star Wars character you are you. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the answer is always reflective of who you are, right? Mm-hmm. Always. And that's because it's vague enough that it fits. It's going to fit anybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, horoscopes, right? Horoscopes,
yes.
right? That's the beautiful one. They say things that's like, I can kind of see it, and maybe two people that are two distinctly personalities. And once again, you'll see that some people will say, they're kind of like this. And I'm like, oh, no, they're not. But they hold on to that belief so strongly.
Is that actually called the Barnum? I just remembered, even though I still can't see it on my screen. It's called the Barnum Bias.
The Barnum Bias. There you go.
And the last bias that we were going to talk about today is the fact that the more you know about something, the less confident you are, which seems kind of contrary to what you think. You think the more you know about something, the more confident you are. But what happens is, because we know so much about it, we tend to be a little bit more cautious. And then also, similarly, the less you know about something, the more simplistic you think it is. So you're kind of living in that world of ignorance is bliss, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, psychology, for instance. You think you know, and then you keep learning these different theories and biases, and it's like, I don't know anything at all whatsoever. But that's the beautiful thing, right? Is the more you know, don't think to yourself, I'm knowing more and more. Still say to yourself, I'm realizing there's so much more to go. I'm realizing there's a lot more to learn. I'm learning less and less than I actually am. And that might actually keep you going and make you, and that's a good cognitive way to look at that.
I'm not much of a risk taker, so for me, when I initially thought about this, I couldn't think of an example at all because I'm cautious about everything. But but I've seen this in other people. Like I have a few people that work with me that when they first started, they were like super sharp. Like, and they still are, but I see their confidence drop. They reached a point where then their confidence dropped just a little bit, and I think it's because now they know what they don't know. Yeah. So, yeah. So we make decisions on a daily basis. And we use these biases a lot, but just being aware of these biases can help you make better decisions in the future.
Yeah. The only thing that we can give you is awareness towards all the things that you may be doing that you don't even notice. More often than not, these are things that you don't necessarily notice. And that's what we always say, to consciously look through everything, even if it's something that you routinely go through. Why do you routinely go through? What's the purpose and what is the goal? What is your focus? Is your focus just kind of going on autopilot, or is it making every single thing have an intention?
And so the next time somebody cuts you off, don't assume it's a personality thing. Maybe it's a situational factor. Maybe they're getting to the hospital, or maybe, who knows?
Or
we don't know.
Regardless, to your point, the way that we're talking about it, it's most likely a reflection on them, not so much on you.
We know, like,
maybe.
Compared to.
Oh my gosh, we have conscious and unconsciously. The average person has 70,000 thoughts in a day. And then 75% of those, most likely, they don't even know. And then those 25%, we don't even know. So imagine all those thoughts. There's, like, to your credit, there's so little we know about people. Because in the 70,000 thoughts someone has in a day, we may see a couple, 100, if lucky. So, yeah.
All right. So there's that part. I didn't know if that was
awkward.
A little awkward moment.
I blinked out the F word. I didn't say it. I was like, so I'm super sorry about that.
There's so many more cognitive biases out there. We just wanted to introduce you to a few. And that's what our show for today. So we will see you on the next Let's Talk About It Tuesday, where, as Amir Exposure Effect explains, you will like us even more. When is Amir Exposure Effect explains? Blah.
That is super awkward.